Hey guys, welcome to the 15th episode of the Sling Den. The next guy we have on, you may see as a familiar face. He was in our Christmas special, but I'm super excited for him to have his very own episode, and that is none other than Jordan Smothers, aka Smoke Show. How you doing, Jordan?
What's up? How we doing,
I'm
Benji?
good. How are you doing today?
I'm all right, man. Tired as always, but I was born tired, so it's all good.
That's the way. Now, I was just saying in the introduction how we kind of seen you for a very slight period during the Christmas special. We found out a little bit about you. But if anyone didn't get a chance to watch that, or nobody have seen you before, which I'd find pretty crazy if they haven't, but if you're new to shooting, you may not have. This is Jordan. Give the listeners and the watchers a quick rundown on who exactly you are.
Well, on YouTube, I'm the Smoke Show, and in real life, my name is Jordan. I go by Jordan or Smo, and if you see me out and you call me either one, I'll probably respond. So, anything else, I kind of ignore all the other names people call me. But yeah, basically, I started slingshotting a few years back after watching Jörg Sprav, our favorite large German, and yeah, his videos were just so crazy, and the stuff that he was building was so wild, and I wanted a piece of that, so I kind of hopped on, and since then, man, I've just been like making slingshots and shooting a lot, and I think that like what people would know me for, at least what I hope they know me for, is my sort of bringing to the community a love for doing it yourself and figuring out yourself how to make your own slingshots and shoot and uh, doing all that kind of fun stuff.
And what was it prior? Obviously, you mentioned there how you kind of got into shooting. Did you have a background in shooting? Was it sort of guns or archery or anything else like that prior?
Yeah, I mean, I from the time I was very little, one of the earliest Christmas presents I remember getting as a kid was a little fiberglass recurve bow, and my father would take me down, and we had a great big cardboard box that I stuffed with a bunch of rolled up newspapers, and then we would shoot my bow in the basement in my little apartment building when nobody else was down there. And it's sort of like it sort of sparked an interest in archery, and I shot archery for a long time. I used that little bow forever. Eventually worked my way up to a compound bow, but I found that I didn't enjoy it as much. Um, it wasn't that I feel like it was cheating. I think compound archery is an art in its own, but I really hung around the more like traditional um, uh, bow, hunting style self bow crowd, basically. And after I started doing that, I was trying to make my own, and through the wonderful system of the YouTube algorithm, I came across some how-to videos of making your own slingshots from some channels that I was following, making your own bow and arrow. And so one thing led to another. I found Jorg, and I never looked back, man. And of course, all of the guys who were out there before me, um, Gamekeeper John and Nathan Masters, and all these guys who like led to that stuff, be able to like.
The sound's just dropped off there somehow.
What's that?
Oh, there we go. The sound's back. You just
Oh,
dropped off the sound. We're back. We're good.
what was the last thing you heard?
We heard Nathan Masters. We
Okay,
heard
yeah,
Gamekeeper John, Nathan Masters.
good. That was before I started telling lies. Um, no, I basically was. I saw these guys as like kind of legends because they were out there showing people how to do this stuff, and I wanted a piece of that. I wanted to join them in on that, and so I started making and basically started YouTubing very soon after I started making, because it was like, if I can do this, then I feel like anybody can do it, because I don't consider myself a super skilled person in that realm. So I feel like, man, if I can make some plywood frames or some natural slingshots, then anybody can. I'm just going to show you what I'm doing. and you can follow along.
And usually, when I ask this question, people usually respond with a certain answer in mind. When I say what was your first slingshot, people usually say, "Oh, it was the wrist rocket or the Black Widow or something along those sort of lines." Going off what you've just said, I'm going to assume that the first frame you shot was one you made yourself, or was it something else?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely had a wrist rocket as a kid, although I don't really remember doing anything with it. Um, in terms of shooting targets. Really, I was, probably just shooting rocks at my neighbor's garage and stuff. Like, I was probably doing dumb things with it. I don't really remember, but I know I did have one. But the first real like experience that I had with slingshots that I can remember anyway is making my own natural fork slingshot and banding it up with some non-latex TheraBand gold that I got by accident, and slinging big marbles and golf balls and stuff. That was, I was emulating Jorg, so that was the whole kicker there.
That was the idea behind it. Now, you said that it was shortly after you started doing this that you created your YouTube channel. Do you kind of look back, and it was probably a good idea because you've got yourself a little journal of where you kind of started, and obviously over time, I imagine your techniques and the methods and the materials you've been using have kind of advanced a little bit. I certainly see my first ever podcast to perhaps the last one being vastly different, just because of experience in doing it. Do you find that? Do you find that you look back at some of your older videos to what you're doing now and think, my God, I've done a fair bit of work here?
Yeah, yeah. That's a fun part. It's kind of one of those things where like I've heard people in the community say like, "Oh, I've thought about doing, making a YouTube channel and putting out some videos, but I don't know what I would do or say." And I'm like, it doesn't matter what you do or say, because a year from now, even if you put out what you think is the greatest thing, a year or two from now, you're going to look back on it and just be like, "Oh my goodness, what was I thinking?" So at the time, that was like the whole goal for me. It was just to document my journey and have the fun of being able to have a reason to make slingshots. Like, I'm gonna make this, and I want to show people how I did it, even if what I'm doing is bad, because like somebody who gets into it might also see that and be like, if this guy can do it, if this idiot over here is shooting slingshots and having this much fun, then I can certainly.
And when we talk about YouTube, a lot of people can kind of be put off because they're waiting for some sort of backlash or some sort of trolling, which we see little bits of, but not in large amounts. What has surprised you, if anything, through your experience, with your channel?
What surprises me is that you're 1 in 1,000 comments that are mildly negative are even those typically come from a good place. So what I mean by that is like somebody who responds to my channel and is like, "Hey, um, the material you're using isn't the ideal material," or "I tried that once and it didn't go well for me, and I don't know why anybody would want to do it," or something. The vast majority of people who are going to see your YouTube Slingshot YouTube channel are going to be from the community, and typically all of those people, or 99% of them, are going to be some of the most helpful people and encouraging people on the planet. I've yet to find a group of people with any similar interest who take the camaraderie and community aspect as seriously as slingshot shooters do.
And if you're anything like me, you've probably managed to bag yourself a whole bunch of friends through, not just shooting itself, but the YouTube channel. I know for a fact through the community, I would have met some fantastic friends, but by doing my channel, I've met some amazing people. Was that something that surprised you?
It's very surprising. I mean, especially in the beginning, I was making YouTube videos and I was just doing it for me. I was just shooting in my backyard, and Some of my friends would come over, and being a grown man, it's a little bit, I guess, embarrassing. Although I'm not typically the type of person who gets embarrassed easily. But it's a little bit like, I have this little side hobby, and I kind of keep it to myself more. Um,
Mhm.
but even when I try to like get people into it, and I give away some slingshots or have some people come over who were friends of mine outside of the community, it never really sticks. And I feel like a lot more in common with the people inside of the slingshot community, even outside of the slingshot itself. And the camaraderie there is just a little bit, it's just a little bit different than what you would experience like in your day-to-day life. The friends that I've made through slingshots are, I think, as good or better friends than I've ever had in real life.
It's crazy. I completely agree. I've not seen hardly any of these people. Actually, the majority, like 99% of these people that I speak to online, I've never met face to face. However, a lot of them I speak to on a daily basis. I've had phone calls, like Ethan over in Tennessee. I'm speaking to this guy from Tennessee on the phone, and it's like, it's just it's crazy how, like, as a community we all kind of just gel together. And like you said, I think it is that. I think you have to be a sort of kind of person to enjoy slingshots, and I think it's so unique that we're all kind of unique in our own way and what we're doing. But you said there that, and we all kind of know you. If anybody knows you, the majority of people know you that for the frames that you produce. One thing you touched
Mm.
on in the Christmas special was how you want to make them affordable as possible so that everybody can get out there and shoot, which, really is such a good thing. But the other thing I like about you is you're not just a maker. You cover all the sort of bases. And usually when I speak to people, they're a speciality in one area, but, you do your competition shooting, your hunting, you're making, you've got your YouTube channel, and you do a bit of everything. Talk a little bit about why it is that you've delved so deep into the hobby, and managed to kind of do every aspect of it.
I don't know why. I think that's sort of a personality trait of mine where when I am serious about something, or when I have a hobby that I want to know. So maybe it's just that like I have a certain goal, and that goal might just be to shoot slingshots and be really good at it, let's say. And that's all I want. But if I think that if I make them, that will make my shooting better because I'll understand more of the nuance of slingshots. I'll understand a material weight. I'll understand latex elongation better. I'll understand exactly how to tie the pouch so that it lasts longer, and it's just a more efficient tie. I can experiment more with materials. I can, like I said, I can understand nuance better. If I go out hunting and I'm trying to take a few squirrel, I'm going to use something that's quite a bit heavier than, say, a competition setup. But that doesn't mean that I'm not learning more about my competition setup.
Mm-hmm.
If I can get people into the sport, I think for me, if I get 100 people to shoot and 5 of them are better than me in a year, that's going to force me to get better. I feel like if I put out YouTube videos and somebody goes, "Hey, I think that's cool. He's got something going there. Let me kind of make it better." I think that a high tide raises all ships, as the saying goes. So the more aspects that I can sort of dig into, the better my experience will be in every aspect. And then I encourage competition. I think that I've said this before to people, but like if I have a design that I've made, that I've come up with, and you want to make a custom version, whether to sell or for yourself, I think that all of the designs that I have are going to be available for anybody to use for anything that they want to use it for. Because if they get it out there and they're like, "Hey, this is a great design," I can be like, "Hey, that was me. I did that."
Mm.
Or if somebody builds something for somebody and they want to shoot that, but they wouldn't buy like an HDPE one, I'm not losing anything. I don't care about that. I just think that the more we get it out there and the more I can understand about all the aspects of it, the better we'll all be, and certainly the better I'll be.
And I think, you've just hit a massive point there, in terms of getting new shooters on board. And, we kind of have this topic of frames and people using other designs and things like that. But as a whole, what we should be doing is getting as many people on board and pushing this as much as we can, because it's going to help everybody in the end. The more people we get in competitions, the more builders we get, the more people we get watching YouTube, the more people just generally getting outside, getting some fresh air. I know has helped a lot of young men with their mental health and things like that. So the more people can get on board, the better. And you've touched on a couple of things there about how a little bit more about what you're doing because you've had to figure things out. And I think if I asked myself the question a year ago or a year and a half ago, right, what would my top tips for a beginner be? They would be completely different to what they are now. And I don't know whether that's different for you, but if we could get your 3 top tips, what would they be? And would you say that they've changed over the years?
Well, I'm sure that they've changed. I don't know what I would have said in the past, but I've always been an advocate of trying to make your own slingshot. I think that my number one tip would be for somebody new, if somebody had no experience, zero experience, they have no slingshot, they have no latex, they have nothing, and they say, that looks like fun, what should I do, how to get into it? I would say go online and find one of the more versatile slingshots and try everything with it. Go get you, a simple shot scout. Go get a Unifox from Wasp. Go get a Smo Slings HDP frame. Something that's not expensive but that has a lot of options for you, and just play with it. Try large taper, try small taper, try thicker latex, try bigger ammo, try smaller ammo, try everything. Don't limit yourself, and don't think for a second that we all don't eventually do it anyway. Because, you can't sit there and try to tell me that people in the slingshot community never shoot, larger ammo or smaller ammo, or we don't try different things eventually. But the other thing would just be to go make a slingshot. Go cut a tree fork, ideally from dead wood, but if not, whatever. And sand over the tips, make sure they're smooth. Wrap your own latex on it. Shoot some marbles or something. I think that the little bits of things that you're gonna do and learn along the way there are more are gonna serve you better over time than somebody who says, go buy this frame from this maker with this latex and this taper, because you're gonna have it's gonna be boring.
For sure. Gonna be boring. And I think for me, I've kind of reversed, and if you look back at my first couple of episodes, I would have said, get one frame, stick to it, and practice with it, get used to it. Which, in some ways, I can see why I would have said that at the time. I've only been shooting, I think it's around 3 years now, and at the beginning it was like, I need to understand what I'm using. I need to understand the technique. I need to understand the frame. I need to understand how it works. So if I just use the same one, then I'm just going to find out what I'm doing wrong. But now that I've kind of tried many things out, like you said, I've used anything from 8mm steel, 7mm steels, 10mm leads. I've gone up and down, up and down. But for me, making my own bands was one of the biggest changes that, come into my kind of accuracy. It wasn't until I started making my own bands, I was like, oh my God, I've been missing so much. Because I was just telling people, yeah, let me try this tape. I didn't know what a taper was. I was just like, oh yeah, I seen him on YouTube mention this taper. Give me this taper. What's your active length? Oh well, it's we're going to ignore elongation. I'm just going to do well. Just so it's like, I think trying out is massively important. And I think if you do make your own frame, not only can you make it unique to yourself, and I think if it is one of the first things you do, you're going to understand the frame itself. But also, if you wait a couple of months or maybe a year and you make another one, that next frame you're going to make is going to be so much better because now you understand so much more and you can compare the two.
Yeah.
Is that something that you've kind of experienced?
Yeah, for sure. I think that it goes back to so I have two other interests that are heavy interests to me outside of slingshots. One of them is just physical exercise and training, and the other one is my dogs. And these two things speak very well to the overall arching point that I'm trying to make, and I think that you are as well. If you look at mixed martial arts back in the early 90s, what you really had was just kind of a style versus style system. And as the mixed martial arts grew in popularity, guys cared a lot less about style versus style and they cared more about winning. And what they were doing was adopting things that worked from different styles and forming a sort of mixed martial art so that now when you go and train in mixed martial arts, you are learning them all at the same time. It's all one art versus just learning kempo or just learning karate or just learning jiu-jitsu. You're learning it all. You're learning how to strike, how to take down during the strikes. You're learning how to mount, how to escape, how to wrap somebody up in guard, how to kick and punch at the same time without and still maintain guard, distance management and all that stuff. It all become one thing, but it only happened in the last 20 or 30 years. Whereas for hundreds of years before that, it was really still style versus style. Nobody wanted to accept that one style was better than the other, but nobody wanted to test which style was the best. When they forced the evolution of martial arts, they got what works and what doesn't very, very quickly. The same thing happens with dogs. You can take a dog breed in a few other breeds, and within 10 or 15 years, you could essentially create a new breed. The evolution happens very, very quickly with dogs, whereas typically that sort of thing takes thousands of years. But if you're picking the things you want that work and they work, then you can create a system that is different, but everyone can follow along the steps. And I think with slingshots, what's happened is for 40 or 50 years, we've had one kind of thing that existed in the slingshot world, and that was just the wrist rocket. And then when the flat latex came along, there was this huge leap in evolution, and now people are starting to figure out the small nuances, things that work and things that don't. We have a ammo range that's pretty small, much smaller than it could be. We have a latex range that's pretty small. It's much smaller than it could be. There's still a few things obviously we're working out, but I think it's super exciting. And I think the more people we get trying it, the better we will get at working out what works and what doesn't. Because if you ask anybody in the community, I mean, they're all probably using somewhere between 0.4 and 0.8 latex. Considering how thick latex could be, that's pretty a narrow window. They're all using a certain fork width within a certain range. It's usually somewhere like 75 to 95 millimeters, which again, you have an infinite number of options, but the fact that we've narrowed it down to this kind of small range speaks to that evolution. That's a very interesting aspect of it to me. I think like if somebody came out and they were like, hey, I'm shooting this 200 millimeter wide frame, we'd all go, what do you mean? But if he's shooting really well, there's nothing we can say about it. He's shooting well.
And that is, one side of it, which I think is one of the most enjoyable things that I found is you have to find what's right for you, and the uniqueness of all the different kind of bits and pieces that comes with it, whether it be the latex, the frame, even down to the pouch and things like that is, when you're a beginner, it can be a little bit overwhelming because you're looking at it going, I don't know what all this stuff means and which one should I get. This guy on Facebook told me to get this, and then I've been told to get this, but you're 100% correct. Is the evolution of the hobby that we're all kind of in, even up to sort of the last 2 years, things are advancing even now. It's not like we've hit a brick wall and it's like, oh well, this is the best we're ever going to get.
Yeah.
Things are continuously advancing, and the analogies you've used there of mixed martial arts and with the dogs is bang on, because even now, like you said, mixed martial arts, even now is still advancing. Like there's techniques coming into it now which weren't used 5 years ago, and is exactly the same with this as a hobby. There's new frames coming out, and you think, oh my god, why wasn't this thought of before? There's people turning up to competitions and doing different things, and it really is such a good thing to see.
Yeah.
But you've touched on sort of all the things that you've done there. Now, when it comes down to sort of competition shooting, what is it about that? Have you always been a competitive person, or is it you wanted to kind of just get out and get around people who also enjoy the same sort of thing as you do?
Yeah, the competition for me was just about testing myself. That has been what competition has always been about for me. So throughout my life, like I tried very, very hard to not want to be better than somebody else. I want to be better than I was before, and I'm just using a competition as a yardstick to sort of measure my own progress. If I place at a competition well, and then I'm like, well, here's the aspects that I can improve on. But at the same time, I excelled in this thing, so I want to make sure that I'm still taking that seriously. Just because I did well in this one thing doesn't mean that I'm gonna do well all the time. I still have to practice that one thing, but maybe there's some weaknesses that I have. Maybe there's some tips that I have. I went into the competitions with that mindset. From my first competition, my mindset totally changed. I could care less about how I shoot now at a competition. I could care less about how I shoot. I want to win. Don't get me wrong. I want to win. I want to blow everyone away. But I say this all the time. I'd rather be the worst shooter in a competition full of excellent shooters than to be the best in a competition full of brand new people.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody can win anything if the standard of competition is low enough. I want people to go out there and really blow me away. And I want to be, like I said, the worst shooter in a group full of very good shooters. But the community of slingshot shooters out there, man, they blow me away. They are the whole competition just turned into a family reunion, really. And so that's what it's more about. It's more about going to see those people, going to give a hug, give a high five, swap frames, tell stories, show pictures of my squirrel kills. It's all about that kind of thing now. But I still want to win. I still shoot and practice to get better. Still want to win, but it's less about that.
And what is the main reason behind that? Is it sort of the iron sharpens iron kind of thing, where if you're up against, people who are kind of blowing you out of the water, you're going to get back home and you're going to practice 10 times harder because now that the standard is climbing, which it is. We look at, and it was said not even sort of 6 years ago, 6-7 years ago, where people were kind of saying if you can hit a can 10 times in a row, you're a good shot, and things like that. And now it's like, well, you should be doing that all the time. If you're going to go to these competitions, and you're hitting these spinners and these tiny targets, then you should be doing that. And the standard is just creeping, obviously, because of all the equipment that we're getting now. The flat band, amount of speeds, the lighter draws, the different frames with different holds, and the way people are figuring out now how to get their exact setup spot on and fine tune their equipment to the level where everything's fine-tuned. They're practicing on a regular basis, probably daily, before going to a competition. And it's almost like, an Olympic sport where it's, it's this really intense kind of thing where it's not just a slingshot and it's not just this. And I'm not just, I'm going to aim and I might hit, I might not. There's so much into it now.
Yeah, it's become a lot less. So it used to be, who can hit the most targets, who can hit the most. Now competition is becoming who can miss the least. And that's awesome. That's scary if you're a competitor.
Mhm.
But that is how cool it is to shoot a slingshot, because I don't want to say it's a toy. I want to avoid saying that. But really, I mean, it's kind of a toy.
Yeah.
And to be that precise and that consistent and that like elegant with a toy is awesome. It's awesome.
And you asked me a question in my live that I did the other day. If I had to save humanity with one frame and one setup right now, what would it be? I'm going to fire that one straight back at you. And if you had to save humanity with one shot, say we had to hit, I don't know, a 25 mil spinner to save humanity, what are you using?
Right now, if that were the case, I would probably go with my Axiom X. I think that frame I can pick up and get on target as fast as I can with any frame. But if that was a question that you posed to me in real life, I would pick up the frame I've been shooting for the last few days, whatever frame that is. Um, if I hadn't shot in a week or two, I'd grab my Axiom. But realistically, if I was shooting my big clunky tube shooter wrist rocket for the last couple days for some reason, that's the one I'd grab, because that's the one I know right now.
And what would be your go-to setup? So let's put in a different scenario. If you're going to, let's say we're going to the East Coast Slingshot tournament, and you want your prime setup, your setup that that you're going to be able to kick ass with, what you're going
Yeah.
with.
So I got it here. This is my aluminum Kodiak I made for myself. It's not the first one that I made. It's actually the second one I made. The first one that I made, I screwed it up a little bit, and I didn't like it so much. And I tried to fix it, but anyway, I sent that off to Robert Pursley. He's got that one now. But this is my Michael Linder lanyard he made me. So Linder, if you're watching, this is the one that this got on. And my setup would be a 20 to 12 simple shot 0.5 bands with my sniper sling pit pouches. Everybody knows I'm in love with these things. I've
See,
shot
I've
10.
not seen a blue one because I use the same pouches, but mine are tan, and I've never come across the blue ones.
Yeah, I have blue and I have some purple. I have most of them are purple. I have 2 or 3 blue ones left. And I've had these for about 3 or 4 years now, and I've put tens of thousands of shots through them, and they just won't die. So they're gonna stay with me as long as that is the case. I shoot 8mm steel, and I flip my band. So I have one band that comes straight over, and then one band that curves over,
Interesting.
because I twist 90 degrees when I shoot.
That makes sense.
And so now it's perfectly straight. There's not like a curve to the.
And why is that? Is that because of your anchor? You kind of holding it?
Yeah, I turn my hand from here upward, like a
Okay.
like
So
an
I have
archery
a
kind of
very,
release.
very slight twist. It's not dramatic, but because my anchor's my cheekbone, I find that it's slight. It's not, how some people are kind of on the corner of their lip and they're
Yeah,
straight. Because mine's here, it's slightly turned, so I just level out ever so slightly with the
yeah,
frame.
yeah. I just sort of
Um,
like instead of that, I just turn my whole hand sideways,
nice.
and it just keeps my band straight there. But that would be my setup. Um, my 8mm steel. That's my target shot. They're not gonna. That setup isn't gonna do any damage to anything, but it punches holes in paper and it knocks the knockdowns over. So that's all I need, man.
And then what about hunting? What sort of setup are you going at if you're out getting some squirrels?
Uh, I have yet to really fail with the point 0.7 simple shot. If it's particularly cold, I'll even go to 0.8. And typically, I have a very wide taper, like a 25 to 15 or a 24 to 15 taper, in that range. And I cut them about 3/4 of an inch shorter. I get that sucker maxed at my face right there. It's heavy, but that setup with an 11 millimeter steel ball that has put some food on the table. So um, I go big on those. Not trying to. I'd rather miss. I was actually having a conversation with my brother about this the other day. Um, he's out watching me shoot not too long ago. We were hunting some squirrel, and he was like, and I missed a lot of shots. And he was like, "You don't miss when we're in the backyard." I'm like, "Yeah, well, I'd rather miss than hit poorly.
Mm-hmm.
I want a kill shot or I want to miss. That's it.
Yeah.
So I'm okay missing a lot."
And I think that's, one thing that is vastly different between your target shooting and when you're hunting is you haven't got that pressure. And I feel like for me, not having gone to a competition, I feel like that's something that I kind of have the fear of right now because I've not gone and experienced it. I've done my mixed martial arts and stuff, and I've fought in front of a good couple of hundred people. But I feel like the hunting aspect, the pressure that you feel not to injure the animal and not to take a clean shot, should kind of overpower the pressure that you're going to feel in a competition setting. Obviously, it is a little bit different because there's other people around. When you're hunting, the majority of the time you're on your own. But to be honest, hunting was one thing that I really concentrated on my setup. I really did kind of concentrate on, I wanted that light draw, but I wanted to also make sure that if it hits, it's going to do enough damage. Did you have to do a lot of tweaking with what you were using, or did you? I mean, it sounds like because you've maxed out, of course, if it's going to hit, it's definitely going to do enough damage. But was there a lot of tweaking around that you had to do with your hunting setup?
Yeah, a little bit. I have changed it a little bit over time, but I once I got my ammo to the speed I thought was sufficient, I basically have stuck onto the same thing since then. The only thing that's really changed is over the last 3 years or so, 4 years, Simple Shots latex has gotten a bit more stretchy, and so I've gone from I've cut it shorter. That's all. It's basically the same taper, same thicknesses. I've just had to cut about 20 millimeters off the end in order to keep that same like bottom out position.
That makes sense. Now, in terms of your making, obviously you've just showed us the kodiak that you've got there. Tell us a little bit about how you really kind of got into that. Obviously, you told us about the beginning, how you wanted to kind of start making frames, and that was one of the joys that you got from it. And then obviously your YouTube channel shortly come along after that. But where you are today is a completely different story. You're not kind of just making natties and things like that. How did that all kind of start up, and how did you get to where you are today with your frames?
Well, beside just it being initially a hobby, which I've had quite a few hobbies. My wife will probably go on for longer than this about all the hobbies that I've had. I basically thought that once I started shooting in the competitions and I became a sort of part of the community, I felt almost an obligation to see through making frames in a way that got more people shooting, because I felt like it was something I had to do. Like, I have to get more people into this. I have to be able to contribute in a way that that helps people, basically. And so a long time ago, I decided that there was going to be two things that I would never do, and there was going to be two things that I always do. And two things that I would never do is I would never charge an amount of money I myself would not pay for something that I've made. That was one of the more important things. And I'm never going to, at least purposely, do things that other people are doing because other people are doing it. If I do something, I want to make sure that it's something I actually want to do. Okay. And then the two things I promised myself I would always do is I would always encourage people to do the same thing, make their own frames if you can, and I am always going to be giving frames away. I usually don't go more than a week or two without doing a giveaway that I'm either promoting like on YouTube or just like texting somebody, hey, I made this thing, I want you to try it, I'm going to send it to you. Giving them to other people that I know personally. I want more people to get into the sport, and if that's what it takes, then that's what it takes.
And obviously, I imagine you get quite a lot of joy from the making aspect as well. What kind of got you thinking about sort of designs and things like that? Because obviously I've seen some of your frames and some of the work that goes into it. Talk a little bit about how you kind of come up with these ideas and get it from sort of paper into the kind of making aspect to get a finished product.
So I started with things that I thought were comfortable about various frames, things that I thought worked well for me with various frames. One of the first frames that I had success with in terms of my shooting ability was the Torque, the original Torque. And that frame fit my fork width needs very well. And then I also got an Evo from Wayne Martin, and that frame fit, it held better in my hand than even the Torque did. And I thought, like, well, I like this bell-shaped handle because that keeps my hand toward the fork better. And so I'm going to incorporate that. I want the fork width of the Torque because I like that fork width. I also liked having a wider fork head so that I could incorporate wider bands for when I'm hunting and more narrow bands for when I'm not. And then over the course of time, that sort of like chalice design, the chalice shape, is really like aesthetically pleasing to me. And over time, I sort of made that as my first, a compilation of all three of those things in my first frame design. And that was the OG Yeti. And then as I started making them and shooting them, it just became like, I think the handle's too long. I think this part's too thin. I think I want to shorten this or take this piece out or whatever the case is. It just became more of like a ergonomics thing for me.
And I guess it can be quite difficult because what might work for you might not work for me and vice versa. So you could make something and go, I'm just not feeling this. But if you gave it to me, I'd be like, this is the comfiest frame I've ever shot. So it got to be quite difficult as a maker, knowing that it's not a one size fits all.
Yeah, that that happened to me by accident, which was the funniest thing because I made this Yeti design and I was so happy with it. I was shooting it and I sent it out to a few people and they were like, well, it's huge. And I was like, yeah, it's, I have big hands and I'm almost 6 feet tall. I'm like not a small guy. And they were just like, yeah, it's kind of too big. It's too much. And then of course I made a scaled down version. I put it on the printer and I put it down scale wise in the computer. And I printed that out and traced one out for my wife. My wife's like 5 feet nothing and weighs like 110 pounds. So, she's tiny. And I was like, well, I'm just going to make her the same thing. It's just going to be smaller. And she's Latin. So I called it the chupacabra. And everyone loved it. Everyone wanted one. So that became like the most popular frame I had. I was like, well, I guess I don't know anything. And the less I think I know, the better off I am.
In a way, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. I mean, if you do a little bit of learning, you're in trouble. If you let yourself learn a lot, you'll be good.
Perfect. There we go. So we're going to get onto some questions now that I've had sent in, but also I've got a new feature on the Sling Den. So any members can come on and ask their question live in person. We have got one Sling Den member in the lobby waiting, and that is Ethan Martin.
Ethan.
So we got
What's
Ethan
going
here.
on, Smo?
What's happening, man?
There we go. How you doing, Ethan? Quickly introduce yourself.
I reckon
and,
I'm doing
we're
all
gonna
right.
get you to ask Smo your question.
All right, I'm Ethan from Tennessee Slanging, and the question I have for Smo is If you could have two frames, one of your own design of one of somebody else's, what two frames would you have?
Boy, well, like I said, the Kodiak's usually my go-to most of the
I
time.
kind of figured that one.
That one just is. It feels like it was made for me, and I think that would be the one frame to rule them all if I had to.
Yeah.
But the one frame that I like above any other single design out there for all purposes would be the Evo. And that was one of the ones that inspired my design the most. I can pick up any like Evo and it feels normal and natural to me. I love my Axiom X, and for target shooting, I can't beat that one. But my Evo, it has a special place because of how I based a lot of the Kodiak design off that, and that was like my first product, mass produced frame. So that would probably be my second choice.
Both great choices. Can't go wrong with a Kodiak and Evo. Cannot go wrong with them.
Absolutely.
There we go. Perfect. Thanks for joining us. And if anybody
Anytime.
wants to catch more of Ethan, check out Tennessee Slanging. Go and check him out. He's a great guy, great shot, and very entertaining at the same time. So thanks for joining us, Ethan. Thanks for the question, and I'm sure we'll see you again.
Anytime.
Okay.
Thank y'all for both of y'all for what y'all are doing. Y'all are doing a wonderful job.
Thank you, man.
Take care, buddy. Have a great day.
Y'all have a good one.
There we go. There's Ethan, man, with his question. What a good question.
That's a good guy, man. I love that guy.
Super cool guy. Super cool. He's actually the first member to come on and do the face-to-face questions. So he'll go down in history of the Sling Den. There we go.
That's great.
So I have got a whole other bunch of questions here. So I've got a couple from some other members. So I've got 3 from Double D's. And if you know Double D's like I do, it's going to be pretty entertaining. So
yeah, this is going to be a banger here.
He'd like to know, how did you get so fly? Did you drink enough water today? And what is your all-time favorite build to date?
Well, the water helps with the flyness. I'll put it that way. And I can never drink enough water. What was the third question?
Your favorite all-time build.
My favorite all-time build. Oh man. Man, I'm very proud of one that I made with two copper liners. And it had some like purple micarta on there. And I used like brass pins, and I took a lot of time with that one. And I made I believe it was a Yeti with that one. And I'm not sure what happened to it. I'm not sure where it went. I think Josh Dills had it for a minute, and then I think he had traded it to somebody for something. It's out there in the ether right now, but that was one of my favorites.
Nice. So if anyone's watching this and you have it, you need to let us know where it's at.
It's like purple and brown with some copper liners and some brass pins in there.
Perfect. Sounds beautiful. The next one is by Aaron Von Holsten of Leighton Strods and Cutties. If you could do a collaboration with any maker or slingshot company, who would it be? And if you could go on a mooch with anyone in the community, who would it be?
Oh man, mooch with anyone. Mooch with anyone's a tough question. I think that I'd go with Wayne Martin because he was really instrumental in the beginning of my my slingshot shooting career there, both in terms of his design and his personal help. When I reached out, he had and had questions. He was always there to help me. Collaboration would be a tough one, man. There's so many good makers out there right now. I think that I don't know. I mean, I think one of the best makers, at least here in the United States, is Hunter from Taking Shots. And I think a collaboration with Hunter would be amazing. But if I could just give my design to somebody to have a slingshot made for me, it would hands down go to John Jeffries. I wouldn't want to touch it. I feel like any kind of work that I did would just be ruining it. But if I could just hand him my design and say, hey, here's my thing. Can you make one? Do whatever you want. I think that would be the greatest thing that ever happened.
That sounds perfect. And that's something that I'm kind of saving for. Every time I get my hair cut, I have to withdraw money because it's cash only. And then I usually get like a £5 bit of change and ask one in a little envelope. And maybe in like a year's time, I can get myself a John Jeffries frame because they're beautiful pieces.
Yeah, man, he makes some great pieces. I mean, I've had the pleasure of actually handling a few of them. Having a few friends that have had them before, and I just sit there like, Jesus, man, like whatever you paid wasn't enough. It's amazing work.
You do really get what you pay for, and I know what you said about you wouldn't charge anyone anything that you wouldn't pay for yourself, but when you kind of look at the detail, the precision, and the materials he's using, you can understand why they're at the price they're at, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So the next question we have is from someone else you may know, and that is Rex Spurlock Jr. So, in all the facets of slingshots, shooting, making, the friends and the memories with the friends in the community, out of everything you do, which gives you the most enjoyment and satisfaction in the sport?
Ooh, that's deep. Man, that is deep. I don't know how to answer that. I think that so I have a good friend that I made within the slingshot community, and his name is Andy Duffy. He is not he's a regular, but he's not like a super in-depth regular. And he's at ECST every year. That's where I met him. And he's one of the most genuine people that I know when it comes to wanting to help and when it comes to giving what he thinks is the best advice that he can give. And I think that the first competition I went to was the ECST a few years ago. It was 2021, I believe. And I went there and I got out of my car. I didn't know a single person. And I walked up to register. And right before I got to the door, he kind of just walked over and stuck his hand out, was like, I know you. You're from YouTube, And I was like, well, I don't know you. And he was just like, my name's Andy. And we got to talking and just have become really, really good friends. Like a guy that I'll call just to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
Not about slingshots necessarily. We bounce ideas off of each other. He is the one who kind of set me on a path to do these shows with Simple Shot, and he's just given me a lot of like courage and guidance, I would say, and he's probably the best thing that I've gotten out of the slingshot community, I think.
Nice, man. Nice. Big shout out to him. Next one is by Andy Maund here in the UK. If you could use any materials, no matter the cost, what would you use and what design would you build?
Any material, man. I mean, it would be really fun to have a diamond slingshot, right? It'd be indestructible. You don't have to worry about fork hits. That would be pretty amazing. I don't know how that would work in terms of machining, but yeah, something like that, or maybe like some sort of meteorite or something. Like, you have a otherworldly slingshot in your possession, like what they made Thor's hammer out of, that'd be pretty gnarly.
I like it outside the box. It's
Yeah.
kind of like some good outside the box thinking there. And what sort of build would you do?
I mean, I'm a plain build guy. Like the types of frames I enjoy are the types of frames that I make, and those are flat. I'm not a big fan of like super ergo, fill up your palm kind of slingshots. I like them flat, just like that. And I think that's just what I would make, is just a copy of my Kodiak here. And I would shoot, the slingshot that you have to be worthy in order to shoot.
Makes perfect sense. So the next one is by Tristan Kest. After last year's tournament at the HHST, which I'm assuming is Hocking Hills.
That's Hocking Hills,
correct me if
yeah.
I'm wrong. You had an excellent shooting of PFS shooting. Are there any tips or tricks other than tweaking to shoot PFS at a high level to make a top 10 in a tournament?
Yeah, that was a moment for me. That's probably my favorite actual competition moment. Was coming in fourth at a well-established and popular slingshot tournament by shooting a PFS. And I think that the best tip that I can offer is to shoot it like you would shoot a regular slingshot in every aspect, with the one exception that you're tweaking the pouch slightly. Just shoot like you're going to shoot a regular slingshot. Aim off the fork tip, find the anchor point that you're going to have, get your draw to your spot that you like it, and figure out that release in terms of the slight tweak you need. But PFS focuses my brain because I'm not trying to hit myself in the face. So I have to think about shooting. And then when I'm thinking about shooting and I'm not necessarily thinking about hitting the target, shoot really well, because I'm doing everything here correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I release, the ball travels how it's supposed to travel. And I end up doing well and shooting well with it. So, if you're going to shoot a PFS, that would be my the best advice I think I can offer. Shoot it like a normal slingshot. Just give yourself a little tweak.
There we go. Tristan, hope that's helped you out. The next one is by James Clarkson, who lives nearby me, actually. Do you think Chris Graffin will retain the world title in China? And will you ever come to the UK for one of our famous competitions?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to come to the UK for many reasons, not the least of which would be to meet all the UK slingshot shooters, the catapult guys. As far as the World Cup goes, I mean, that's anybody's game. Since the last World Cup, who knows how many new shooters there have been practicing, who knows how many shots a day. Chris Graffin has as good a chance as anybody I know, though. That guy can shoot. He can flat out shoot. But it really could be anybody's game, honestly.
That's a fair shout. The next one is by Chuck and Steel. Who would you pick to build your all-star team of 5 shooters, you being one of them?
An all-star team of shooters, like an Olympic level team, huh?
I'm assuming so, yeah. So it's yourself and 4 other people on your team. Who you're picking?
Man, shooters, and I'm trying to win, I assume. I'd probably pick Chuck and Steel. I think he, as it stands right now, is probably the best shooter on the planet. I would probably pick Tim Henry, because as it stands right now, he is officially the best shooter in the United States. I mean, he's won everything he's entered the last year or so. I think if it came down to it and I just absolutely had to get somebody I thought would really dial in and shoot really, really well, I'd probably pick Nathan Masters. I've seen Nathan Masters make a slingshot from a stick and run a knockdowns in a matter of minutes, just picking up a stick and shooting it. Just, man, I think the other guy that I would pick that I would need to have on the team if it was like an Olympic style event would be saw him and shot him, Jose Guerrero.
Nice.
He does not miss on the knockdowns. He is a absolute sniper on the knockdowns, and I probably picked that kid as well. He's young. These guys, Tim and Jose, they're so young. They're like teenagers. They got time to get better.
It's scary, right?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Well, I mean, I know Tim's on his little one-wheeled skateboard thing, shooting cans out of people's hands at the moment.
Yeah.
So I mean, he's really kind of pushing the limits there. But yeah, no doubt, these younger guys coming up, is a kind of scary thought to know how they can shoot right now, and if they carry on what they're doing, give it 10 years, But again, that's the evolution. I'm sure in 10 years' time there'll be another bunch of teenagers 10 years younger than them who are shooting just the same. So exciting times ahead.
Yeah,
But that's a great team. I'm sure it'll strike fear into anybody. I noticed they're all from the US as well. So, we got our work cut out, guys, here in the UK. Right. The next one is by Carlo Del Carmen. So he'd like a walkthrough on your build process in the workshop, a story and experience shooting PFS in a tournament, and what advancement you feel you have contributed to within the sport. So I know you've answered a couple of those already, but do your best to just go through a couple of things.
Sure. A walkthrough in terms of a build, if I'm going to have something that's a little bit more complicated, I like to have everything set up so that I can just walk right through the build. And what I mean by that is, like, if I build like a layered G10 and aluminum kind of slingshot, I want to have all my pieces in a row. I want to be able to sit down and start work and not stop until I get to a point that's forcing me to stop. Like if I need glue to dry. But I want to have all the pieces. I want to have everything I need. I don't want to have to wait for materials. I don't want to have to wait for sizing. I don't want to have to wait for any of that. So I want it all right away. Typically, I use my router. That's my favorite tool. And I have my plywood templates. I tape and glue those templates up to the material, cut it on the flush trim bit, and then I keep stacking that material with blue tape and glue and blue tape and glue and blue tape and glue until I have all of the layers. And I just keep running that on the router and then adjusting the height of the router the taller it gets. Once I have all that together, I drill my holes for my pins and my lanyard. If I'm going to do binding posts, that's when they get them too. Then I separate all the layers and decide how I'm going to stack it in what order. Glue up, clamp, rubber bands, however I'm going to hold it together. Next thing is sanding to make sure I got all the residue off, all the glue off, all the paint off, all the tape off, all the stuff that's not supposed to be there. Typically at that point, I go back to the round over bit on the router, and then it's time to sit down and sand. That's my least favorite thing about slingshot making is sanding. I'm like Anakin Skywalker. I hate sand. I despise that part. But you get down to it, you work your way up through the grits. Wet sand, if the material is noxious, I typically do 0 wet sanding with wood. I don't like actually doing any wet sanding with wood, but if the material is aluminum or G10 or micarta or one of the, if there's super glue involved, I'm wet sanding. I don't want to get that stuff in my lungs. And then it's buffing. And I have one buffer. I have a bunch of wheels. I have a bunch of compounds. And at that point, you just got to spend as long as you have to spend buffing. But that would be the whole build process. In terms of the PFS at the slingshot competition, the reason I did it was to take my mind off the competition aspect. Just shoot. Just go out and shoot. I know I can shoot. I know I'm a good shot. When I get to the competition, I get in here. And I'm not shooting. I'm not focused on what I'm doing. So I'm thinking too much about it. And instead, I decide to shoot a PFS because it forces me to focus on what I'm doing. And in my mind, there's just no difference in shooting a PFS and shooting a regular gapped frame. The way you hold the ball is just slightly different. And I mean, I might continue doing it. I had a lot of success in terms of scoring, so I might continue doing it. I don't know, but I just like shooting PFS anyway, so it wasn't really that big of a crossover for me. Just the competition aspect was the thing that was a little different. The third part of his question was what now?
It was what advancement you feel you've contributed towards the sport.
What advancement? I mean, I hope that in terms of advancement, what I will end up being remembered for is my determination to get as many people shooting as possible. So I don't know that I'm actually advancing the sport except for participating in it and trying to participate at a high level. But if there's one thing that I want to be thought of is a guy who actually physically took slingshots and put it in people's hands. And whether that means by making my own, making them cheap, selling them cheap, giving them away. The partnership that I have going on with Simple Shot right now, I basically go to different places where people are not shooting slingshots yet. Gun shows, gun and knife shows, bushcraft events, archery tournaments. I set up a booth and I sell Simple Shot products there. I actually have slingshots people can pick up and shoot. We usually set up a range somewhere if we can. We put up little targets, some things that are pretty easy to hit, other things that are a little bit more difficult. We just get people shooting slingshots, man.
Nice. That
New
sounds good.
people, as many new people as we can get shooting slingshots. And that's what I want to be remembered for, putting them in people's hands and getting new people shooting.
Nice. Nice. So the next one's by Ronald Taylor. How do you shoot with 8mm and light bands 90% of the time, and then 7/16 when you go hunting? Do you have a specific training regimen or a time period of adjustment?
No. I just I said this before. Like I shoot 8mm for 99% of my shooting. Light bands 8mm 99%, and base anchor. When I go out hunting, I am just putting on heavier bands and throwing boulders. I have a very, very low success rate hunting. So I don't want people to go out there and think that I am like taking care of the population of squirrels out here. But I have a very low success rate hunting. If I go out and I get one squirrel every couple of weeks, I'm doing well. Yep. And the reason is because I'm picking up a slingshot that I'm typically not used to shooting, with bands I'm not used to shooting, and ammo I'm not used to shooting. And I'm hucking those things downrange, trying to conk something in the head. And if I can get a kill or two, great. If I don't, it's no big deal. But it helps that I would consider myself a person who's pretty in shape. I work out pretty regularly. I take care of myself. I lift weights pretty regularly. So going from a draw weight of like 6 pounds up to a draw weight of like 15 pounds or so, it's not that big of an adjustment for me. I'm capable of handling that sort of draw weight. So
sweet. The next one is by Jesus G. Ramirez. What advice would you give to someone who has never gone to a tournament and is about to go?
Shoot to win. Do everything else to have fun. Shoot to win, have everything else to have fun. When you're shooting, shoot to win. Okay, but every other minute that you spend not actually shooting or not shooting for your score, do not think about it in terms of being at a tournament. Just think about it like it's what it really is a bunch of middle-aged guys shooting slingshots in the woods. You can't take that very seriously, man. You can't take it too seriously. So just come have fun, hang out, do your thing, and don't think like you could be any age, any gender, any religion, any height, weight, disability, doesn't matter. Nobody cares. We're all there to have fun shooting slingshots. Nobody cares. Come hang out, have fun. That's what it's about.
And that is the message that is always replicated by people. So, if everybody's saying it, it must be true. So the next one is by someone you have mentioned, that is Jose Guerrero. What are a few things you wish you knew about building before you started, and your favorite setup / latex?
The setup latex right now is still simple shot 0.5. That's what I'll use 99% of the time. I have other latex that I like as well. I like the Sniper Sling Yellow a lot. I have yet to try the Omega bands. I'll probably be grabbing a couple rolls pretty soon here on their next run. In terms of things that I wish I knew earlier, I would not make and sell slingshots out of plywood. The layers of plywood stack front to back in a slingshot. So, like, if your slingshots here, they stack front to back. And if you fork hit, the layers are being broken forward, and they'll break. Like, the slingshot will break. Fork hits on plywood slingshots, structurally, if you were going to get a fork hit, then plywood would be fine. But I just wouldn't use slingshots for very much building. They're fine if you're making it for yourself and you understand the risks, but I wouldn't make them to sell them like that. And I also would not use oils on a plywood slingshot because they'll eventually delaminate. The other things that I wish I knew sooner was that if you're building a slingshot for yourself, just make it to your own hand. Like, don't worry about what standard sizes are and all that. Like, everybody likes a certain size that they like, but you're not making that slingshot for anyone else. You're just going to make it for yourself. Then there are no rules. You don't have to be so rigid in terms of making this fork straight and that fork this way and all that kind of stuff. Just make the thing you like to make.
I mean, it's the ultimate custom, right? If you're making it for yourself,
exactly.
Nobody's going to be able to make a frame as good as you are for yourself.
Right. Exactly.
So the next one we have is by Chris Foster. What's your favorite thing about slingshots? How and why did you get into it? And if there's anything missing in the community, what do you think it is? Again, you've touched on a couple of these, but just do your best to answer a couple of those.
Sure. The first part again.
Your favorite thing about slingshots?
My favorite thing about slingshots. My favorite thing is the community about slingshots, the people, and the camaraderie that you get from the community. My favorite thing about the physical tool is the versatility with which you can shoot them. So you can use tubes, you can use flats, you can use square latex, you can use rubber bands, anything that stretches, pretty much you can use, and you just need a forked stick. It's that simple. In terms of what I think is missing from slingshots, this is a really interesting question. How and why I got into it, we kind of covered already. But in terms of what I think is missing, what's missing is standardization in the sport as a sport. I like kind of how loose the rules are and how everybody can kind of do whatever they want and it still works. And we get the evolution we talked about earlier because of that. But the thing that's missing right now is a sort of like discipline of slingshot shooting. The how to shoot slingshots school, if you will. In the United States, we're very, very big on sports. Football, baseball, hockey, all these things have really, really specific rules. And they have really, really specific rules within a very small confined space. And then the outliers use the rules that exist to win, basically. They use the rules. They don't try to go outside of the rules. They use the rules to win. And so in the United States and the world over, really, we have the World Slingshot Organization. And they have a very specific set of rules for how they're going to score and how they're going to run their competitions and do all that. I think what we're just missing in the world is this sort of team building, club building, slingshot as a sport aspect. and we're working on that too as we speak. We're trying to establish a organization for sport, so that you can shoot whatever you want to shoot all the time in your backyard. Who cares? But we want to streamline and organize the sport into a specific sport with specific rules, so that we can, make it into a legitimate sport.
And I think that's what we need to do. If we want to make it into the Olympics and those sort of things, we need to standardize it, have everyone singing off the same hymn sheet, and whatever they're doing in China, you're doing over in the States, to what we're doing here in Europe. It all has to be the same. And I think you can use whatever you want to use within the sort of rules. I don't think we need to go as far to say you need to use this sort of latex. I think the versatility of being able to use exactly what works for you should stay as it is. But I think in terms of the competition setting and what the actual goal is going into the competition should be standardized. And I still think there's room for these hunter courses and things like the East Coast Slingshot tournament, where there's a variety of different elements of the tournament. I think that will still be something where people can go to show off their skills, bond, and those sort of things. But I think if we're talking the serious level of competition like the Olympics, I think is what you're saying there. Everything has to be kind of standardized in one place.
Yeah, I think about it in terms of like how archery has their system set up. If you're a target archer and you're trying to compete in the Olympics, there's very specific things that you need to be able to do in order to get in. There's specific equipment regulations and restrictions. There's very specific things that you need to do and use to shoot. But in the same time, especially in the United States anyway, traditional archery is still huge, and it's still kind of an anything goes system, and we can have both. Slingshots can accommodate both things. You can have hunters courses where anything you want to shoot is fine, whatever you want to do, make the ball hit the target, that's your only goal. And then you can have this very specific, very down to a T measured and managed system of scoring for indoor competition as well. And there's no reason both can't exist.
That makes sense. So the next one is by Michael Linda, which you've given a shout out to already with the lanyard. What do you see as the major reason slingshots aren't as popular in the USA? And what can we do to grow the sport? Or is growing the sport worthwhile? Is growing the sport a worthwhile goal to have? And why don't you brand your frames or use custom pins?
Okay, so the last one first. I don't brand them because I don't like the aesthetic. That's it. Wow. Okay, so in terms of what we can do to grow the sport, start a club. Get some people together to shoot once a month or once every couple of weeks in your area. Go out into the woods, go out into the forest preserve, go out into the state park, the town park, the local park, set up a net and a backdrop in your backyard, wherever you got to do. Right now, the best example of this is Moan Waller and what he's doing out by him every Sunday. I am jealous as hell when I see his Facebook lives, and he's got a ton of people shooting basically in his backyard. That is how we're going to grow the sport. I start a club. That's the biggest thing. What was the first part of his question again?
Why do you not think they're?
Oh yeah, why they're not as popular in the United States? So I think there's two reasons. We have guns.
That's a big point.
Like a slingshot in the United States, and again, I want to be very clear here. Slingshots are not toys. But in the United States, when you have a gun, you don't bring a knife to a gunfight. Mm-hmm. So the gun culture is so big and so ingrained in our nationality as Americans. And the reason that slingshots are just not that popular is because it's like bringing a knife to a gunfight. It's this tiny little thing that has very limited power, that isn't going to do, you can't really use it for self-defense. I guess you could, but that would be such a poor choice for self-defense. I'd rather fist fight somebody than try to shoot them with a slingshot, honestly. They just they're like really, really nerfed guns. So, we just have this huge gun culture. Archery is huge in the United States, though. I don't think people quite grasp how big archery is in the United States. And I don't think there's any reason slingshots can't fit right in with that group. Having done, for the last year, I've been reading and researching and calling and talking and going to these archery events. They're really well organized. The people at these places are exactly like the people in the slingshot community. They're super welcoming. They're super happy to have us. They think slingshots are great. They love doing this kind of stuff. And they are everywhere. There are several big archery competitions in every state. They're all over the place. There's archery expos. It's huge. It's huge. There's no reason we can't piggyback on that. I just think that they're perceived as a toy. They're perceived as a children's marksmanship discipline. And while that could be true, it's not necessarily true. And so we can do away with that by just getting more people in.
And I think that's a spot on answer, because I think, and I've said this many times, the cultural difference here in the UK, where we don't have guns, the mooching scene is a completely separate part to everything else, and it's huge. If you go onto the UK Facebook pages, I'd probably say a lot of it is to do with the mooching scene. People showing their pictures with the squirrels, or whether they've gone out and there's rabbits. It's a big difference there, because we don't have the guns. Obviously, we can have some guns, but there's a lot of kind of restrictions on what you can and can't do with them. Whereas, it's a back pocket kind of weapon that you can kind of go out onto a permission and, take a couple of game home to put food on the table. Whereas I know you can do that over in the USA, but like you said, why bring a knife to a gunfight? I imagine a lot of people are going to go, well, I'm not going to take a slingshot. I'm going to take my gun.
Yeah.
So, you've kind of hit the nail on the head there with that answer. So the next one is by Jorge Hernandez. Can you remember the first frame you ever made? What was it?
Boy, the first frame I ever made, man. Okay, so I made a slingshot out of a piece of PVC pipe.
Nice. Do you still have it?
No, it's been long. It's been broken a long time. But basically, so when I was into archery, I followed this YouTube channel called the Backyard Bowyer, and he's this Hawaiian kid that was making PVC bows with like fiberglass driveway markers inside of them. So there's a lot of, they were very nice. I actually made a few on his tutorials that shot really well. Surprisingly cheap, surprisingly easy to make. But he had a video where he took a piece of PVC. It was just a 1-inch pipe that was about 6 or 7 inches long, and he cut it down and sort of heated it up so he could bend it, and bended it into a slingshot. And he was just shooting that as a slingshot. And I do not recommend that, by the way. Do not do that, because PVC is so brittle. It's so brittle. The first thing you hit with the fork, you'll break the forks. But I did make one, and I shot that with big old surgical tubing coming out of it. It was not fun. It was not what got me going in slingshots, but it was part of the movement into that direction that I had. So, but that was the first one that I made. Yeah.
Nice. The next one is by Michael Stellingworth. You've been an amazing champion of the sport, and you were amazingly gracious and inviting when I met you at HHST. How can we help champion the sport? Do you think tournaments and gatherings are important to the growth of the sport? And if you could make changes to tournaments, what would it be? Who had the coolest pond skip shot? you saw at HHSD. There's a lot to unpack there, and you've touched on a lot of stuff. I guess a lot of people want to know the same sort of stuff.
The coolest skip shot ever was obviously the coin worker Michael Stellingworth skip shot across the pond. But yeah, I think that man, being a champion of the sport is I don't wanna that's maybe a moniker I would love to have one day, but I don't think that I'm quite there yet. I think that what we can do, what we should do, not necessarily what we can, but what we should do is we should turn slingshot into a true marksmanship discipline. We should talk about it like as if it's a marksmanship skill. We should act as if it's a marksmanship skill. We should use them and with them the same way that we would with our guns here in the United States. That there's very specific rules you follow in very specific instances. You don't point it at anything you're not trying to destroy. You treat every slingshot as if it's loaded. You just follow a set of practices that ensure best practices, because you don't want it to turn into, you don't want it to become a Dennis the Menace situation.
Yeah.
That's how you champion the sport, and then you just get people shooting. You tell people, hey, look what this thing can do. It does have some destructive power, but look how accurate it can be. It's a marksmanship discipline. Let's act like it's a marksmanship discipline. Let's shoot with it as if it were a loaded firearm. And let's get people seeing how cheap and easy and accessible and fun it actually is. That's how we're going to grow. That's how you should act if you're going to be a champion of the sport. You need to act like that. That's what's going to help us all.
I think, it is a double-edged sword in a way, because on one hand, we want everything to be as accessible as possible, as affordable as possible, so absolutely anybody can get their hands on one and do it. But at the same time, like you said, we want to be taking precautions, because, I know here in the UK, we've had instances where there's a petition going around at the moment to ban them because people have shot swans. Now, I know 100% these are not people within our community. They're just idiots, probably kids, who have probably found one in their dad's shed or something. They're not from this community, but the problem with it is they are so accessible that anybody can get their hands on one. And unfortunately, it only takes one thing like that, like shooting a swan, to give it a bad name. No one else is going to see all the good in the community unless you're stood in this community and by what you see and what you've learned by being part of this community, you're not going to know any good because you're not in the community. But, when something bad happens and the slingshot's to blame, it's just going to destroy it for us. So, what you're saying there is probably the best answer we can get. It's about, treating it like a loaded weapon. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I think that, again, if we just act in the same way that the archery community acts, then we will be able to have our cake and eat it too.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't go to a park and unload arrows into the forest. You just don't do it. And obviously, a slingshot can probably not going to cause nearly as much damage as a bow and arrow will, but you have to treat it like that. You have to go to a place where it's okay to do it. You have to go to a place where if you miss, you're not going to cause any damage. And you have to treat it, or in a group setting especially, like it's a loaded weapon. You just have to be aware of that, because it will get regulated. It will.
Mm-hmm.
If there are instances, there's going to be a politician who's going to stand on that platform and then act like they did something heroic by banning these things, and we know nobody wants that. So
no. So the last one is by Sean Shag Hackleton, and we've kind of touched on this topic, but if there's anything else you'd like to add, please do so. Do you think slingshots will become an Olympic sport?
I think that it's a very, very real possibility. Yeah. And I've been involved with a lot of minds about starting a you know, organized sporting body in the United States. We're one of the few countries right now that would be ineligible if slingshots made it into the Olympics. If slingshots came, let's say, to the 2024 Olympics this year, the United States would not be able to send a team. We do not have the eligibility requirements set up for that, which is a shame. But it could be a very real Olympic sport. China has a lot of pull when it comes to Olympics. They have a lot of pull, and when the Olympics happen in China, when the Olympics happen in a particular country, that country can petition the International Olympic Committee to add certain sports into the Olympics. And China could very well recognize that in the United States, we don't shoot slingshots, we shoot guns. And slingshots could be a way that they can rack up some medals, and they could easily inquire about implementing it. And if the United States, or if the International Olympic Committee okays it, then it will be an Olympic sport. It'll take a few years, a few cycles of Olympics for that to happen, but it could be a realistic possibility in the next 10 years or so, maybe. I think by that time, when it is being proposed, we'll all already know that it's going to happen. There will be a moment, I think, in the world of slingshots where we'll all be like, it's happening. And we'll know. But yeah, I think that it will eventually be in the Olympics. Yes.
Nice. So that's all the questions done with. I am going to put links down in the description where they can get hold of your YouTube channel. So make sure you do subscribe to the Smo Show. Highly recommend it. And I'll also put a link down to the Facebook page so you can find out a little bit more. Also, but if you just want to give the people an idea of how they can reach you, how they can get some of your frames, and what they can kind of expect from your YouTube channel.
Yeah, find my YouTube channel. That's the easiest way. There's links in the description of most of my videos there that you can find and click on. That just makes it, in terms of actually getting to me electronically easier. Although I'm very active on Facebook as well. If you find me on Facebook, you can friend request me, send me a message, let me know what you need, and I'll try my best to hook you up there. Facebook and YouTube are pretty much the only platforms that I use at the moment. I've dived down the TikTok rabbit hole recently, so we'll see if that becomes something in the future. But as of now, YouTube and Facebook, easiest way to reach me by far.
Perfect. Well, I just want to say thank you for coming on. I've really enjoyed this chat. I knew I would before we started talking. We've also managed not to talk about MMA too much because I was a bit afraid of that. I could talk about that all day long. We've managed to keep it on track, so I'm quite proud of that. But is there anything you kind of want to leave, any sort of message you want to leave for the watchers or the listeners out there?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest message is something that we talked about a lot, and that is that the sport of slingshot is growing at a pace that is unrecognizably fast to a lot of people. And I think that it's unrecognizably fast for a number of reasons, but not the least of which is, again, because of how easy and affordable and accessible the sport is. You do not need to spend any amount of money beyond getting some latex and getting yourself a forked stick. And if you pick those two things up and you can shoot, you might be a champion shooter in a matter of months. So just try. That's the biggest thing, is just get yourself a stick, get you some latex, start shooting. Don't worry if you're bad. Everybody's bad in the beginning. You'll get better quick. And yeah, it's just it's like a zen, relaxing backyard hobby that costs you virtually nothing. I mean, there's no downsides to it, really. So that would be my final message. And then the other thing too, like we said, just be responsible. Please be responsible with it.
Makes sense. Perfect. Very, very nice message there. Thank you for coming on again. I'm sure everybody's going to enjoy it, and I'm sure I'll catch you soon too. So hope you enjoy the rest of your day or night. I don't know what the time is there. It's about 1 a.m. here, but
Yeah, it's getting late, but we're all good. It's a little bit going to be bed soon. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks again. I'll catch you soon.
Thanks, Becky. Awesome.
See you later. So guys, there he is, Jordan Smothers. Hope you've enjoyed that. Please make sure you do subscribe to his channel. It really goes a long way for anyone using YouTube to kind of promote their slingshot hobby interests. And as you can see, it's getting quite late now. I'm getting quite tired. So I'm going to get to bed. Hope you get to go out and shoot soon. Please subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.